welcome to the Future Series. I'm your host, Anthony Dan, and for those of you that are new to the podcast, we talk with real founders about building a business for the future. So whether you're scaling your business currently or starting your first side hustle, we're able to give you the nuggets of information to help you succeed in the future of work. But today we've got Anne Leathers on the podcast from Tryp Studios. How's it going, Anne?
Very good. Great to be here.
Excellent. Great to have you on. Just for the listeners as well, Anne, would you be able to give us a quick overview of yourself and what you do with Tryp at the moment?
Yeah, I'm Anne Leathers. I'm American. I live in London. I've been here 8 years. I actually grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. After school, I went straight to New York because that's what all the cool kids were doing. So I did too. And it was a hunting ground, and it was a great way to sort of incubate in sort of all things business, which is how I got started. And about 5 years ago, just before, I started Tryp Studios.
Amazing. And what do Tryp Studios do? What's your business?
Tryp Studios has become a network of 100 plus vetted, quite senior specialists who you can inject into your business on a fractional basis, whether it's for the day, whether for the month, or for the project. Our longest client's been about 3 years. Our shortest client's been a day. I built the business to be the help I always felt like I needed. I had all these ideas and knew I always wanted to start something, but I didn't know where to get the help. It first was like a coaching sort of environment that I think was very prominent sort of pre-COVID and definitely heavy during COVID. And I didn't feel like that was good enough. I felt like one degree away from a therapist. And I felt like I needed real specialists who were affordable and accessible. And so we built Tryp.
Amazing. Super. I would love to delve more into Tryp in a bit, but it'd be great to have a look back, like you mentioned, about your sort of early career days in New York and how that sort of shaped you to be who you are now. What was it like? Where did you start in this world?
Yeah. I started by getting kicked out of high school. I then went to college and got C's and D's. I didn't like anything traditional in general, but I was smart enough and savvy enough to know that, when you need to focus, you should. And I'm also neurodivergent, which I think is a very, very, very fancy way of saying you have ADHD. I was diagnosed when I was 15, so there's nothing more vicious than an ADHD focus. When I really get into something, it's like me versus me, and no one's gonna come in between that. And so I was always able to find myself in the right rooms and go to the right places, and that was New York around sort of 2014. I did a little detour as a ski instructor in Utah first, but then
nice.
Talk about peaking. That was my peak, and then jumped into the race in New York. And first it started in fashion because again, like all my friends were kind of creative and cool kids, and what were the cool kids doing, and what was seen on TV, right? Like we were still in the back end of like maybe Sex and the City or whatever that was. So that felt like my sort of straddle to creative and corporate, but I was never technical enough in my skills in creative, so I was kind of the corporate loser of all my friends. And so I started at Philip Lim, which is a big, it's still quite big, but definitely Asian-focused fashion company. Big, we did a runway show every season, and then left Philip Lim in operations to go to Rag & Bone, which was a great and very fun environment. At the time, all my friends were either ad agency or they were coding for finance, or they were in marketing and finance. So that kind of gives you a general sense for the money that was sloshing around, the fun we were having, the intellect, the conversations that were going on, probably at the club at 2 a.m. And by the time I finished at Rag & Bone, I knew that actually I was onto something, because it was so nice to be the corporate mind surrounded by creatives, because I knew I could sell. And I really liked the idea of taking a product I believed in and taking it to market and convincing people to give me their money. But I knew I wanted to leave fashion. I could see even in the mid-2015s that the industry was really suffering, both in terms of culture and in terms of it had been so democratized that actually as a brand, the brands were dying. So I went into interiors to to a British brand called Tom Dixon. I left there as head of sales, and came over to England to bring an architectural lighting brand into the Middle East and Asia. And again, it was never the vertical for me. I didn't care about lighting. I didn't really care about interiors. It was more about where can I go and who can I convince. And I think I was like, I could be selling tech, I could be selling notebooks, I could be selling light bulbs. It's more about figuring out like who wants what and how do I convince them of it. And then stayed and found product became really two-dimensional, and I wanted more. So I went into editorial and started selling partnerships. And so I went on to work for Dazine as head of partnerships, and that was when I started realizing, creatives have so much to give, and also at the exact same time, I was kind of in my late 20s, and my sort of cohort of friends and ex-colleagues were all reaching burnout. And so you had these amazing sort of technical guys who were very much creative, who were doing coding and had maybe been at a bank and then gone somewhere like Amazon or gone out to the sort of interesting thing that was going on in Berlin. And they were bored, and they were like selling their soul, and they could see where things were going. And then you had the ad agency people who, you lose a big client, the team's usually fired from the agency, right? So just going from agency to agency to agency. And so I sat down with a friend and we said, let's sell our friends and make a little money. Let's find our friends jobs. And I think, now that Tryps, we're sort of out of infancy and more into teenage years, that's still my why. It's like, I don't want to work with you if you're not an interesting person who's going to bring a great environment to me, Tryp, our clients, our network. So I still feel like I'm just trying to find my friends jobs.
I love that. Well, a lot of great businesses, how they start solving a simple problem, and it works, and you grow. And
it works.
What was it that did you always want to set up a business, and also did you want to leave New York?
Oh, those are two totally separate but interesting questions. I knew I always wanted to set up a business from when I was very young. I was the girl out front, like selling lemonade every weekend. It's dirty to say this, but it shouldn't be. Like, I'm very influenced by money. And I think that's because society has said that's what the reward is. If society said the reward was chocolate, I'd really want a lot of chocolate. I'm competitive. And so that's what allured me to doing my own thing, is I never wanted to see the ceiling. And I'm leaving out the part that as much as every teacher kicked me out of their classroom, every job I got fired from. I was bored and I was due diligent. Like, I just was not due diligent. It was like, I just kept that mentality of like, well, I'll just cram for the test. And by the way, like, when I cram, I still ace it. So like, don't tell me what to do every day. What boss wants that as an employee? So I just kept being like, cut loose. And then it was amplified when I came out to England because, as much as people really say they celebrate the kind of American enthusiasm, especially that New York, really competitive kind of cutthroat, we're taught in business energy, but also don't come to the room unless you have something to say. Don't just sit here and be a sheep. You better stand up and have something to say. So I'd sit in these meetings and say, what about this? And I really feel like I'd had to sell myself. And I'd have bosses pull me aside, specifically in London, and say, like, you're rubbing people the wrong way. And I'd be like, but my numbers are great, and I have these great ideas, and I feel like I'm thriving. Like, what's the problem? Are they feeling threatened? Should I go just pull them aside and have a conversation? And they were just basically like, tone it down. And it was like, okay. So it was like all of a sudden it wasn't just me not doing it the way it was supposed to be done. It was like, you just don't like me. And that's when I think the big struggle that we're moving into now is that the 9-to-5 is dying. Whether I'd set up this company or not, this company would still exist. The classic 9-to-5, but the challenge with that is whether you're an introvert, or an extrovert, or you're American, or you're English, or you had brothers and sisters, or you didn't, or whatever factors influence us to be who we are every day, everyone is becoming a sole entrepreneur, whether you like it or not. Everyone has to move from jobs to skills and then go out and sell those skills in a new way. And I think that's what's so great about what we do is we kind of create that buffer. Maybe you're not that extra. I hate the word extrovert, but like maybe you're not that extrovert, or maybe those aren't skills of yours, the sales aspect, but you're incredibly technical, or you're incredibly creative. We can kind of create that buffer for people. So yeah, it's just been a train that there's so many times I've been exhausted with my own life that I like wanted to get off, but it's led me to all the right places. And I'm 35,
Yeah.
a young kid. I finally just like feel like it was all worth it. I wouldn't do anything different, but it was exhausting. You know, like.
I love it.
Yeah.
The different founders and entrepreneurs I speak to, you can clearly see now, talking and looking back, like all the different threads that led to where they are now, and setting up a business that's thriving. And you had to go through all those different experiences, those different pain points to grow and learn and get to where you are now.
And I
It
think
doesn't look
that,
like that at the time.
well, and like outside looking in, you know, yes, exactly, but also who cares? Like, my life is my life. You're not having to experience it. You're not having to wake up with the pains. It was more like, especially pre-COVID, to pivot and pivot and pivot and pivot again for sort of our generation was kind of like, we were the first like bad boys to do it, but it did feel like someone's going to slap me on the wrist and this looks really bad on paper. But actually now it's like the advice I give, don't ever stay somewhere too long. You'll make less money and you'll learn a whole lot less. Like, it's also just not where the world is going. Like, you have to be able to pivot. So it's one of those things when it's like you were the first to do it, or you felt like you were the first to do it. It was very isolating, but now you're lucky for having experienced that. So yeah.
I like what you said as well, that everyone's basically like a solopreneur, because everyone's got to manage their own finances, do their own marketing to get themselves out there, then sell themselves, do their own operations, etc. I've thought of things like that before. Do you talk to like these leaders that, or friends, I guess, that you're working with? Do you talk to them in that aspect, or talk about the solopreneur much?
Yeah, very much. And, you know, we've really leveled up in the last couple of years about who's in the network. And it's really like ex-C-suite people who, even to this day, I was having lunch with one of these individuals she's the ex-CEO of a blue chip art gallery, global. And I'm kind of like, what can I do for you? You know, what do you want with me? You know, you're the superstar. And she voluntarily left after almost 9 years. And I had to just like raise my hand and say, I've just got to ask the glaring question: Are you not intimidated or scared of the environment you're going into by choice? And she kind of started on a tangent to your question about, you know, she's really interested and curious about what's out there, and she knows she needs to sort of like figure out how to package herself. And immediately, just like very candidly, I said to her, don't overpackage yourself for a multitude of reasons. You need to figure out what you want to learn. You need to treat this like you're 25 again and get someone to pay you to learn, because access to information has never been more free. So you can learn it. If you have the energy to want to do it, you can learn it. And also, I think ambiguity right now is everyone's friend. I don't think enough people are appreciating how operating in monk mode can be an absolute superpower. And yes, we can use tech, and yes, building a personal brand can be a moat for, you know, finding those jobs, but also just letting the work that you've already done speak for itself can be super powerful too. So I always joke, like, you know, I should be paid way more for the mental health services that I'm providing to very high level individuals that I am not qualified to be giving. But yeah, to your point, I mean, I think that there's a world where we're all just trying to figure it out. So maybe say less and just turn on your learning cap and just figure out, like, if that's going to sell, especially at a senior level. You know, we could talk for hours about what's going on with the sort of recent college graduates and how all of this technology that's coming out is really at the expense of them. I don't know that my advice for them would be the exact same. But I think there's a world where we just need to kind of like, let's see how things shake out. And in the meantime, don't try to do too much. everyone builds a website and they build a deck and then they go figure out what other learning they need to have. And it's like, let the market tell you and then go learn.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. Well, things are changing every day as well, aren't they? So
That's it.
you don't want to spend all your time learning something that's completely redundant tomorrow because there's a new
That's
AI
it.
model that can do this and that. I'd love to have a look down as well when the moment that you decided to start this Tryp Studios and start selling your friends. What happened there? Was there like a trigger point where you're like, this is what I need to be doing? Right, and also, did you fully just jump in with both feet, or did you set up alongside your previous role? Some people start side hustle first, and then it becomes the full hustle. But did you jump straight in, or have it on the side?
It's my personality to jump straight in. I jumped straight in. I wouldn't recommend that. I really highly wouldn't recommend that. And then I had to backtrack because it was my visa. So I jumped straight in, was then living in a country illegally where I needed a work visa, had to jump halfway in. And I'll tell you, one of the benefits of being half in, half out is you start, well, let's show you know, like the viability of paying your bills. But there's an element of you start to really connect the dots in a really important way of how what you're already doing, you're already getting paid for, it can kind of filter and feed into what you're trying to do. And so it would be as simple as certain like contacts that I could tell the company I was working for the product wouldn't sell, but the company I was building the product really would. So, you know, there were a lot of late nights where I was like skimming through my contract, like, what am I legally allowed to get away with? You know, what can I take from what I'm already doing and just, you know, copy and paste. But then what I really did in the early ages, and I still use this in my business today, is I will never do a direct sale. I mean, never, that's a harsh term, but I would never go to a CMO or CEO and say, work with Tryp. I always want a conduit. I always want a buffer. So I took that sort of sales strategy and used it in early days. And so I would talk to other agencies and say, bolt on all our services and I'll give you a kickback. Or I'd go and talk to venture capitalists and say, I know you're working with really young founders and you have stake in the game to get these guys going. We can work at any budget and we'll help them get from point A to point B, get a website up, get a wireframe up, get a deck up, whatever it is. And then we would go to PR firms and we'd say, you know, I know you've got people who have built a table and said, make me famous. And you're like, well, do you have a business model? Are you even shipping the table? Tell them to come work with us and we'll give you a kickback. And by the way, like, everyone wins. No one has to get out of bed. And so then clients, that worked a little too well. So then clients started coming in and I was like, I found the client, but like, I don't really have the model. And that took me a couple years to figure out. Is the hardest part for startups, young businesses, solopreneurs, people who are going to have to go out and face this market on their own, is the volatility of cash flow. And so you've got clients who come in and they want project fees. And you've got clients who come in and you think, you know what, actually, how I'm going to pay my bills is if that person's on retainer. And so that's where the finances start to really play a role, because how long is a piece of string with the retainer clients? Those are the people that had the longest, but maybe left the most unhappy because like the relationship went on a little too long, like the courtship should have ended maybe. And then you've got project people who will then come back, but it's harder to kind of like stay with the client and keep that relationship exceptionally nurtured. And so it took a couple of years to really find the financial consistency. And I think that was the challenge at the beginning, the first couple of years. It'd be like 30 grand 1 month and then the worst quarter of your life. And you're like, is it me? Is it them? Is it? So it's finding the model. And then I think moving from product to service for people or vice versa is challenging. Yeah.
What was it like from a mindset point of view then, once you set up this new business and that was your sort of focus and your aim, and you have these up months, these down months? What was that like sort of mentally over those first 12 months?
You're taking me back to a time that I think I was locked up. No, I'm joking. It's at very, very first, it's the excitement. Like, you're driven by what you're building. And that's probably the first 6 months. And then you're like, oh, fuck, this is hard. And I love the meme, you traded your 9 to 5 for a 24/7, because that's true. You're up at 3 a.m. thinking, fuck, how do I rewrite the deck? How do I win the pitch? When's the money going to land? Why hasn't the client paid the invoice? So yeah, I think like if anyone takes anything away from this, when you become an entrepreneur, you trade a 9 to 5 for a 24/7. But then all of a sudden something clicks and you're starting to figure it out, and you've got clients and you can't let your clients down, and you're on this train that you can't get off even if you wanted to. And I think that's where you're an entrepreneur and you're thinking, oh shit, I got a recruiter that just reached out. Like, I wonder how much money I could make. You know, the outside noises got really loud because it looks sexy to not be so stressed. But then like something clicks and you're on a train that you can't get off even if you wanted to because you've built a thing. And then I'd say you struggle for another probably at least 18 months. I think people think businesses are built in 6 months. They're built in 3 years. And that's really when you have a business. And then you go through a sticky teenage phase where you're kind of like, what do I need? How do I scale? Where am I trying to go? You know, I think every sometimes 1 year, depending on what's going on in the tech world, depending on what your clients have asked you to do, it's a 1 year shift, maybe you're pivoting, but I think real chapters of business are about 3 to 5 years.
And so how did you, obviously going through that first 24 months of up, down, good quarters, bad quarters, etc., and now you're starting to get into those teenage years, as you said, how have you found that, and how have you been able to start to block out the noise and focus?
Another good question. You know, am I? Have I? I hope. We've just done a massive pivot in our marketing and our messaging and our storytelling. And I think sometimes also, even as a business, you're working in one mode because your marketing's old, but your baseline and how the revenue's coming in has shifted. And, you know, the marketing takes time, money, effort. You know, I'll never forget building my first deck and building my first website, and I did it because in the beginning, you should keep your costs as low as humanly possible. And I think AI should help that. But I'll never forget, like, building my first website, it felt like I was like birthing a child. You know, you're so emotionally tied to the copy and the text and the colors you picked. And hopefully we alleviate some of that for early founders. But where we're now is, it doesn't get easier, you just get better. And so the decisions get less emotional, and there's more people around you to sort of cushion you, and the revenue's coming in on the old model, so any new decisions you want to make to sort of test a new vertical or try a new market, you have the runway to do it. And then one thing I wish someone had said to me early on is, you know, Americans love a slogan, so like there's no I in team. We've all heard that, but like you need a team. You need somebody, and it cannot be your significant other. That is a recipe for divorce. You need somebody, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a paid mentor, or just like young people need work right now. Get a young person in. There's so many things that are just below your pay grade that will make you move further faster. So hire the guy for $500 a month, and even if you don't use him, you did a great service to society. I mean, you will use him. But get people in because you need the soundboarding, and you need the pace, and you need the motion, and you need the momentum. And I waited years to hire anybody, and that was such a mistake.
How are you finding things at the moment? I guess from that angle, with this whole new wave of AI coming in, and you're able to automate and build things at a faster pace, but also from the actual people perspective and the leadership side. Has that had a massive effect on how you operate with clients?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yes and no. To the advice of no one, I still like humans to integrate my tech. I don't want to go and do all the R&D myself while I'm still trying to run a business. So I have just hired, I think we gave her like client relations manager. I think that's her new title. And she sits in Austin, and she's someone I've known for over a decade. And she comes from big tech hiring, okay? So like, I trust her background, and I trust her mind, and I trust her relationship with me. She has literally come into the business to figure out how we can update systems and do that type of R&D. At the same time, her other remit is to figure out how we can be growing the community and what that looks like. So I almost feel like she's figuring out how to sort of work in the tech and create things smoother internally, while also figuring out how we can work more physically with the network on the other side of the business. I'd say in terms of the way it's impacting the talent that we match to different clients, it hasn't hit yet. We have a couple AI specialists, so it's affected us in terms of who we need to come in and how technical they need to be and what their background is. And as we all know, there's very few places that are offering interesting and developed AI programs. Oxford's doing a great one that we've had a couple people go through. Harvard, MIT. I'm pretty sure Yale's got a couple like short-term classes. But I think one of the differences about what we do and what a recruitment agency does or what an agency does is that we will actually match the talent but then stay on as project managers. So we'll check in with the client and check in with the consultant, and that creates a whole lot less headache for everyone. You know, the consultant could be mad and we get to be the bad cop or the good cop or whatever it is. And so really it's about us sort of doubling down and making sure that the senior level, especially marketing, I think marketing is the big one that's being hit. Are the senior level, marketing individuals using these tools correctly for our clients?
The two places where we've seen it the most in terms of how we've had to step in and communicate with clients about it has been marketing and PR. PR basically saying, what do I need you for anymore? And the reality is, chat is a language model, not a data model, but at the same time, it's pulling from a huge set of data that lives online, meaning your digital footprint has never been more important, and your control over what your digital footprint is so vital. And so to have PR, all of a sudden everyone wanted to be in magazines and newspapers. No longer is that the case. Actually, PR has to vitally put you in as many different corners of the internet as possible so that you're showing up into these chats accurately. The other place is marketing. No longer are you marketing to individuals, you're actually marketing to agents. And so there's a lot of that means data, not things like $9.99 instead of psychosis, it's data. So instead of $9.99, the price is just the price. And there will be places all around the world that people can in fact buy cheaper, or the ingredients are the ingredients and you can no longer greenwash, right? And so there's a win there probably, right? That real makers and real people doing things with real ethics will be kind of found out. I mean, we hope that's the way the agent will be used, but those are the two things that have sort of creeped up for our clients so far. In terms of internal usage, we explore Lovable for our clients. I mean, that's insane technology to basically build sites in 2 seconds. I use Gemini. Claude has a second version of my brain. We use Notion AI, that's our CRM, and we're recently looking into Perplexity to sort of bring more pieces together. I still write all my own emails. I still call all my own clients. I still handpick everybody who talks to everybody, and that's important to me. Like that's the relationship. Is there a world where we might put all of our profiles onto an agent and let them kind of sift through? I don't think we're ever going to be that big, but potentially. But also there's an ethics issue there too, right? Like, should other people's information that technically I own as an agency live there? These are other people's backgrounds. These are other people's experience. Where could that data end up? So I think use AI, but with a conscience. And I don't know how you feel. I think maybe flipping this back on you with all the research and people you're speaking to, but you look at what's going on with data centers and the environmental impact it's having, right? They're powered by methane gas. It's affecting water supply, not just in usage, but in how much it's damaging it. The tax, I'm American, right? Like these are being bought in Virginia and Ohio and Missouri. And this is where I grew up, you know what I mean? And I live in England. England's a small island. As much as it's not, it is. How would we feel if a data center wanted to go into the Lake District? I think there's the other thing that's coming out of this, which is people are wondering, are we in a bubble? I don't think we're in a bubble. They're saying that Gen Beta, my son was born in 2025. He's the first of Gen Beta. They're saying Gen Beta will know AI the way we know electricity. So it's not going anywhere. There's a bubble, of course, the tool is around, but what is the sustainability and the blank check we're writing to be using these tools? You and I are sitting around talking about what tools you're using, what tool. That's cool because it's affordable, but we're writing a blank check in terms of us basically becoming reliant on the technology. You're getting the CEO of Uber saying they ran out of their AI budget by what, March? You're getting Microsoft asking their coders to stop using it. These are the big four. These are the big boys,
Yeah.
so where's the cap?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had some CEOs as well talking more about it's not just how to use it, but how to use it effectively. So you're not burning through credits. You're actually knowing when to use it for the right things. But also not outsourcing your
Yeah.
thinking, just outsourcing some of the automated tasks. If you're outsourcing
Yeah.
your thinking, then everyone's thinking is going to be the same. It's not going to be you. You're not going to have that. You're going to be pulling on your experience that. I mean, if you could download everything, then maybe it would be slightly better, but it's not there yet, nowhere near there yet. But back to your point as well, what I think and to what you said around being very sort of pro-human, I think there'll always be like it's just going to help people do more business or get rid of some of the more boring stuff that the age of IT and the computer put on our desks. We're going to be less like sat there on spreadsheets tapping in numbers and more interacting with other humans. I mean, I'm more on the sales side, so what it means for someone
Yeah.
like me would be a lot of the admin side or the follow-ups or the research bit
Yeah.
before calls can be set up and automated, so you just spend more time actually building relationships and interacting with people,
Right.
which I think is
Okay. I
great.
mean, yes to yes to all of that, and I think that's great too. There's a world where slop in, slop out, right? So like to your point, not burning through credits, but also there's a world of you've got to be the decision maker on when you're making those calls. And I don't know that everyone will be that responsible. And I think, MIT just did a huge research on basically the brain power of people who are kind of partially using it, fully using it, and not using it at all. And it was the test group that was fully using it that couldn't remember what they had written in essays 2 hours prior. The brain cell, so you and I are lucky because we have this like back end of experience, and it is helping us maybe do like the 80-20 rule, right? Like 80% is getting done, and then we're just being able to like triple down on the 20%. And I think that's fantastic and important and brilliant. Um, but we speak from a position of power, and we speak from a position of privilege to be able to do that. And so I think just the consciousness of knowing when to say when and when to turn off the chat and figure out where the outlets for research are. I hope we don't lose that. um, I think that's a mission too, is like, how do we keep building what where the world is going, but also like, our library is going to exist, where, I don't know what happened. We were Google kids, right? Just Google it. I had a COO at one point say that was a stupid question. Go ask Google. I'll never forget that in a meeting. So I sit on both sides, like the coin in my brain flips of like consciousness and lack of consciousness, because it's access to information and it is simplifying tasks that will ultimately save you money, right? We hope.
Yeah,
We hope, if the corruption of these companies don't become too commercial. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's super interesting. I'm sure we could talk for hours in and out
Yeah.
about all these
Yeah.
different bits. Um,
Yeah.
but I guess looking at where things are going in the future, what does the future look like for Tryp Studios, and where do you aim to be in the next sort of 1, 2, 5 years?
1, 2, 5 years. I think that we've resided ourselves to, we're already global. But I think what I've come down to is I want this to be a community and a cohort. And so what that means is that I'm never going to be a $1 billion valuation company, right? This is a company that I am doing because it excites me when I wake up out of bed. And so I can consciously say, like, I always want to know my people and talk to them every day, and my text will always be exploding, and I want it to be a physical connection. So in the next 1 to 5 years, I want there to be more physicality and networking amongst the individuals that we've sourced and vetted. And there will be a world where um, the contracts we have are very secure, but I no longer need to pitch you, right? Because Anthony's talking to Joe and Joe's talking to Bobby and Bobby's talking to Jane, and they've all met with because of Tryp, and they're sourcing their own projects and they become micro teams together. And so when AI is basically saying, well, I just need one person to do something great, Anthony already has 4 other people to help support on that. And you can almost like build and inject mini teams into companies. And so to move into the physical space, I think the sort of few things that bring people out of their homes, right, are music, food, health, and beauty. Actually, I want to re-say that: music, food, and bev. I'm all for this non-alc theme, but everyone needs a vice. It's not non-vice; it's just non-alc. Yeah, those are the 4 sort of indicators that we've identified as a company to sort of get people together. And so hopefully you'll see more Tryp in the physical realm.
I love
Yeah.
it. I
Yeah.
love it.
More to
And
the yeah.
as we start sort of to round off here, if anyone's listening that thought, oh, like either there may be a founder that would be really interested in having a chat, or a C-suite that would be also interested in finding out a bit more, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah. Ann Leathers on LinkedIn, trypstudios.com. Come and fill out one of our forms. Or my email is just Ann at Tryp with a Y, TRYP studios.com.
Amazing, amazing. Well, and thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It's been really great to chat and sort of talk through your
Thanks
background
for having
experience
me.
and what you're doing now. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. We'll see you all next time.